Hi, welcome back to the garden. Today is Sunday, May 28th. We're going to continue to plant sweet potatoes, but today we're going to give you some tips on tomatoes. Now what we're doing mostly is we're going to use this string trellis method. We want to keep this open. The best friend to your tomatoes is air. The second best friend you can have for your tomatoes is to keep these leaves off the ground. Now we've gone through and pruned this a couple times already. This is how fast these leaves grow. But when it touches the ground, if you can see right here, we already got some little spots started. If we were to leave that, that would work its way up this leaf, and it would work its way into the plant. So just go ahead and clip that off. We've got a nice little cluster of flowers. The flowers come off of the main stem. We've got a sucker here. We want to go ahead and just prune that out while we're here. And prune that sucker out while we're here. We can even make one more wrap. Just kind of lift that leaf up. It'll go around. It'll support. And I'd imagine this leaf on the back side here is going to have to come off here pretty soon, but we'll leave that on for right now. You want to look at your tomatoes every day. Tomato hornworms, those big green worms, blend in really well, and they can eat quite a bit of plant very quickly. What we use to combat those worms is BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, the same stuff that we use on the brassicas, on all the cabbages. It's made from a bacteria in the soil, it's all organic, it doesn't hurt anything, and it stops the worms when they start eating. I've got a link in the description box below if you're interested. Another thing that affects your tomatoes are aphids and spider mites. Now we release a lot of ladybugs to prevent that, but if they start getting out of hand, neem oil, the cold press kind of neem oil, there's also a link in the description box. When we use the cold press neem oil, we have to add a little bit of dish soap to it. You know, oil floats on water. That dish soap helps break that up and it mixes it really well. If you're mixing something up, it's not a good idea to spray your entire garden until you know how it's going to affect your particular plants. When you make a mixture, be sure to test it on one plant first. If that plant still looks good the next day, you can go ahead and spray the rest of your plants. I did have somebody say, that's an awful lot of work just to put a tomato up. I'm not going to do that. I just want to use a ring. Well, the principles are the same. When we were planting peppers the other day, this tomato just happened to be at the end of the line. I thought it needed to be here. And this is how I planted them for a long time, just out there in the garden. You take a ring, be careful around the leaves, but the principle's the same here. You still don't want your leaves touching the ground. And before you got here, I went ahead and put in a stake, because think about this. Water weighs 8 pounds per gallon. When this thing really gets going, it's an indeterminate, it'll grow all the way through fall. It can get 12 or 13 feet long. That much water in a stem, the little cage has no chance of holding that up. So you need some kind of strong stake to hold your cage up. And once it starts growing, we'll be able to use the stake to help it trellis on up. But just like the best friend to your tomato is you want to take those lower leaves off. We come up here to the next one. Got a little sucker. And this leaf's been touching the mulch. Touching the mulch or touching the ground, it still gives it an opportunity for bad things to happen. And you can see all the holes. If this was any higher than the bottom 2 leaves, I'd come out here and spray this with neem oil. And now you see we've got this all open. It's got airflow. That brings us to the next thing you need to watch out for with your tomatoes. When you're watering your tomatoes, you don't want to just take your hose and spray the leaves. Yes, I know it rains and they get wet, but then they have a chance to dry off. If you're watering, if you're just spraying them day after day and they're really thick, you haven't pruned them out, you run the risk of creating fungus on your leaves. You don't need to do that. You want to water low and you want to water deep. And you water around this and you water it so it can get deep. That little bitty surface watering every day, you'll find your tomato doesn't like that too much. You can see how fast that water went into the soil. That's all due to the deep life and the structure it's made underneath and us not tilling for the last 5 years. Now obviously these are indeterminate, they're going to keep on growing. If you have determinate tomatoes, you still can take off those lower leaves and you don't want the leaves touching the ground, but you're going to leave most of your suckers in because they're only going to produce one time a year. This will continue to produce until it frosts. As we transition into summer and it starts getting really hot, plants get up here a little higher, and you start getting some nice tomatoes on. One thing you can do is leave a couple of the suckers up just a little ways, a little extra foliage just to kind of shade those tomatoes out. You don't want to get sunburn on your tomatoes. But I was waiting on this one to show you something, and this is a bonus tip. Go ahead and wrap this up. Dude, we got 3 good wraps on that since we did it last, or 4. We got nice flowers right there. These leaves look good, but look at this sucker right here. But here's the little trick. Here's the secret. These young leaves, and this shows that I'm not spraying anything, these young leaves are edible. You don't want to eat the big heavy leaves. They're bitter and they're hard to chew. On the stuff that you pick off, these little young pieces, some master chefs use that in their sauce. Gives it a little more tomato flavor. But it's just light, it's really nice. So let's go ahead and take the, yeah, sorry, but I'm gonna go ahead and take you out of there. We do have one of these in water in the greenhouse. We're still seeing how long it takes to root. I've got a spot picked out to plant it. And just like everything else in the cut and drop deep mulch system, just kind of cut that in a couple pieces, let it fall, becomes part of the mulch. You can do this too. If you want to see everything I've done with tomatoes, click that link right there and I'll meet you back in the garden. If you want to learn more about the deep mulch, click that link right there and I'll meet you right back in the garden. And until next time, remember, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and God bless you. Come on, let's plant. Let's go plant garden.